We don't take orders from your kind." The words hung in the air like smoke, bitter and suffocating. Ella Washington felt her breath catch, the coffee pot in her hand suddenly weighing 1,000 pounds. For 3 years, she'd worked at the Harbor Grill. 3 years of double shifts and aching feet. 3 years of saving every dollar for her nursing degree. 3 years of swallowing her pride when customers treated her like she was invisible. She'd handled difficult people before. But there was something in Isaac's contemptuous sneer, something in the way his companion Gideon's smirk widened with satisfaction, that reached past her professional armor and struck something raw. "Hello, my wonderful family. Welcome back to Tales, your family channel. May the Almighty envelop every woman in a gentle, healing light so that every hidden hurt within her finds peace at last. May the one who has given her strength bless her with mornings filled with hope, nights filled with comfort, and days that bloom with joy she doesn't have to seek. May every woman who has endured pain in silence be granted miracles that elevate her spirit. May every mother, daughter, sister, and wife be surrounded by love that safeguards her, respect that elevates her, and blessings that follow her wherever she goes. May her heart remain whole. May her dreams continue to shine, and may her value be recognized as heaven honors those who give more than they ever receive. And my family, your love is the pulse of this channel. When you're quiet, it feels like I'm speaking alone. But one comment from you, one moment of your presence, reminds me that I am not on this journey by myself. I promise from deep within that I will respond to every message you send. If your heart is sincere, like the video. If your love is genuine, say, I stand with Tales. The Harbor Grill's lunch service was at its peak, a symphony of clinking glasses, murmured conversations, and the soft jazz playing through hidden speakers. The upscale waterfront restaurant gleamed with afternoon light, its floor-to-ceiling windows framing the boats bobbing in the harbor beyond. Business executives in expensive suits conducted meetings over seafood platters, while tourists in designer casual wear captured their meals for Instagram. Ella had just served Isaac and Gideon the finest items on the menu, premium aged steaks and butter-poached lobster tails, a $340 bill they'd ordered without a second glance at prices. From the moment they'd sat down, they'd been condescending, snapping their fingers to summon her, making comments about the help in voices just loud enough to ensure she heard every word. Now, standing before their table with the check, Ella watched Isaac slide it back toward her without even looking at the total. "We're not paying," Gideon announced, his tone as casual as if he were commenting on the weather. His fingers moved to adjust his Rolex, a gesture that seemed calculated to remind her of the gulf between them. The service was substandard. "Frankly, we're doing this establishment a favor by dining here at all. A restaurant of this caliber should really be more selective about who they put in front of paying customers." Ella's heart hammered. She was 26 years old, raising her 7-year-old daughter Mia on her own, and she lived paycheck to paycheck. The rent was due in 5 days. Mia's school shoes were falling apart. Every dollar mattered. But as she stood there, she realized this moment wasn't just about money. It was about something more fundamental. It was about refusing to be made small, about dignity, about the right to be treated with basic human respect. "Gentlemen," Ella said, forcing her voice to remain steady despite the tremor she felt rising from her chest, "I understand if there was an issue with your meal. If there was a problem, I can certainly get my manager." "Your manager?" Isaac interrupted with a harsh laugh that turned heads at nearby tables. "You think we're scared of some middle management nobody? Do you know who we are?" He leaned forward, his voice dripping with self-importance. "I own 3 car dealerships across the state. Gideon here is a partner at Whitmore and Associates. We eat at places 10 times fancier than this dump. Then why come here at all?" The words left Ella's mouth before she could stop them, a flash of frustration breaking through her carefully maintained professional demeanor. Gideon's eyes narrowed to slits. "Watch your tone," he said, his voice low and threatening. "You're here to serve, not talk back. Maybe if you focused less on attitude and more on doing your job properly, you'd actually deserve a tip." Ella felt heat rise to her cheeks, not from embarrassment, but from pure anger. She had served them perfectly. Their waters were never empty, their food came out hot and exactly as ordered, and she had been nothing but courteous despite their obvious disdain. This wasn't about service. This was about something uglier, something she'd faced her whole life but had desperately hoped would stay outside the walls of the Harbor Grill. "I did my job properly," Ella said, her voice firmer now, carrying a strength she didn't know she possessed. "And you still need to pay for your meal." Isaac stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. The sharp sound cut through the restaurant's ambient noise, and several nearby diners turned to look, their conversations faltering. "Or what?" Isaac demanded, his voice rising. "You'll call the cops? Tell them 2 successful businessmen are being harassed by some waitress who can't accept that she's not cut out for customer service." Ella's hands were shaking now, the check trembling between her fingers. But even as her body betrayed her fear, her mind held firm. She had worked too hard, sacrificed too much, too many late nights studying after double shifts, too many times telling Mia they couldn't afford something she wanted, to let anyone make her feel small. "I'm going to call the owner," she said, pulling out her phone with trembling hands. Gideon's mocking laughter rang out. He exchanged amused glances with Isaac, shaking his head like she'd just told a joke. "The owner? David Chen. The guy's a millionaire with 6 restaurants across New England. You think he's going to care about one unpaid check?" He smirked. "He probably doesn't even know your name." But Ella was already dialing. David had always told his staff to call him directly if there was ever a serious problem. This qualified. The phone rang once. Twice. Around them, the restaurant had gone quiet, all eyes on the unfolding confrontation. The atmosphere was charged, electric with anticipation. "Behind you." The calm voice cut through the tension like a knife. All 3 of them turned simultaneously. David Chen stood just feet away, having entered through the kitchen entrance without anyone noticing. He was dressed simply, jeans and a navy blazer, his salt and pepper hair slightly windswept, but there was an unmistakable authority in his presence that made everyone in the vicinity straighten their posture. The restaurant quieted instantly, conversations dropping to murmurs as diners recognized the owner. The power dynamic shifted so completely it was almost visible, like watching storm clouds roll in. David's gaze moved deliberately from Ella to the 2 men, taking in the entire scene with a single, assessing glance. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his voice measured and calm. Isaac recovered quickly, flashing a confident smile. "Mr. Chen, actually, yes. Your waitress here has been extremely rude, and frankly, the service was so poor we don't feel we should have to pay for." "Stop." The single word carried enough weight to cut Isaac off mid-sentence. David turned to Ella instead, his expression neutral but attentive. "What happened?" he asked directly. The significance wasn't lost on anyone watching. He was asking for her side first. Not assuming the customers were right. Not dismissing her. Ella hesitated for only a moment, then took a breath and decided to tell the truth. Ella took a steadying breath and explained, her voice gaining confidence as she spoke. She detailed the service she'd provided, how their waters were never empty, how their food came out perfectly cooked and exactly as ordered, how she'd been nothing but courteous despite their behavior. She described how they'd snapped their fingers at her from the moment they sat down, how they'd made comments about the help loud enough for her to hear. She explained their refusal to pay the $340 bill, and the comments they'd made, the overt insults and the uglier implications beneath them. As she spoke, she watched David's expression change. Not anger exactly, but something colder and more resolute, like steel hardening. The restaurant had become a theater. Every eye was on this confrontation now. Other diners listened intently, some nodding in recognition or sympathy. The waitstaff clustered near the kitchen entrance, watching anxiously. Isaac and Gideon's body language shifted visibly. Their initial confidence began to waver. They exchanged uncertain glances. Gideon adjusted his collar nervously. Isaac's jaw tightened, a muscle twitching. When Ella finished, a moment of heavy silence fell over the room. David stood perfectly still, processing what he'd heard, his mind clearly working through the situation. Then he turned deliberately back to Isaac and Gideon. The entire restaurant held its breath. Complete silence. Something significant was about to happen, and everyone could feel it. The power in the room had completely shifted to David Chen. David's voice carried across the room with quiet authority. "Gentlemen, I've built 6 restaurants from the ground up. I've employed hundreds of people over the years. And I've learned something important." He paused, his gaze unwavering. The character of a person shows most clearly in how they treat those they believe can't fight back. Isaac's confident smile faltered. Now wait a minute. David continued as if he hadn't spoken. Ella is one of my best employees. She's been here for 3 years. She's never late, never complains, and every single customer survey mentions her by name, positively. His voice grew firmer. She's working her way through nursing school while raising her daughter alone. So when you tell me her service was substandard, I know you're lying. The words landed like hammer blows. Ella felt tears prick her eyes but blinked them back, overwhelmed by the feeling of being seen, valued, defended. Around the dining room, other staff members stood taller, their faces reflecting pride and validation. Regular customers nodded in agreement. Gideon stepped forward, attempting to salvage the situation. Mr. Chen, with all due respect, we're loyal customers. No, you're not, David said flatly, cutting him off with the same quiet finality he'd used on Isaac. I know every one of my regulars, David continued, his tone matter-of-fact. I've never seen either of you before today. And you won't be coming back. He pulled out his own phone, the gesture deliberate and unmistakable. He was prepared to take action. You have 2 choices, David said, his voice carrying to every corner of the now silent restaurant. Pay your bill right now, in full, with a 20% gratuity, or I call the police and have you arrested for theft of services. Massachusetts law is very clear on this. The legal weight behind his words settled over the table like a physical force. The silence that followed was deafening. Isaac and Gideon looked at each other, their faces flushing a deep, humiliated red. The public nature of their defeat was inescapable. Every eye in the restaurant was on them, watching their embarrassment unfold in real time. There was no escape, no clever argument that would talk them out of this corner. Slowly, reluctantly, Isaac reached for his wallet. His movements were deliberate, theatrical in their defeat. He pulled out a credit card and threw it onto the table, a last, hollow vestige of defiance. But everyone knew they'd lost. And the apology, David added. What? Gideon said, confused. Apologize to Ella. No. The 2 men mumbled something that might have been an apology, their eyes fixed firmly on the floor, unable to meet anyone's gaze. There was no sincerity in their words, but the defeat was unmistakable. Ella stepped forward, her hands no longer shaking, and processed the payment. Her movements were calm, mechanical, professional. She ran the credit card, carefully adding the 20% gratuity as required. Isaac and Gideon slunk toward the exit, their posture completely transformed, shoulders hunched, heads down. The arrogance and bravado had evaporated entirely. They left without another word, the door closing behind them with a soft click that felt like a symbolic severing. The restaurant erupted in applause. The sound washed over Ella like a wave, spontaneous, heartfelt support from customers and staff alike. Tears pricked her eyes, but she blinked them back, maintaining her composure even as relief, gratitude, and validation flooded through her. David placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. You did everything right, he said quietly. Don't ever let anyone make you question your worth. The weight of those words settled deep in her chest. Other staff members approached, congratulating her with pats on the back and proud smiles. Regular customers offered words of support as they passed. The atmosphere had completely transformed, from tension to celebration. Ella realized, perhaps for the first time, that she had true allies. That evening, Ella walked to her car through the amber glow of the setting sun. The light painted everything golden, the harbor, the parking lot, even the pavement beneath her feet. It was peaceful, beautiful, such a stark contrast to the tension that had gripped her just hours before. She thought about dignity, what it means, what it costs. About standing up for yourself even when your voice shakes and your hands tremble. About the unexpected allies who appear when you need them most. David Chun had been that ally today. Someone who refused to stay silent when silence would have been easier. The Harbor Grill had always been just a job, a means to an end, a way to pay rent and save for nursing school. But today it had become something more. A place where she belonged. Where she mattered. She thought of Mia, waiting at home with her grandmother. The example she'd set today. The lesson that standing up for yourself wasn't just about winning, it was about refusing to accept less than basic human respect. Ella had learned that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's taking action despite it. That one person of integrity can change everything. She was grateful for David's intervention. But she also recognized her own strength. She had stood her ground first. And that made all the difference. Thanks you for staying till the end. God bless, and please don't forget to subscribe because more interesting stories are up next.